You check your phone, not because it buzzed, but because it didn't. The screen glows in the quiet of your room. Right there, under their name, sits that tiny, innocuous, grey word, delivered. You put the phone down. You pick it back up 10 minutes later. Now it says read. You wait for the typing bubble. It never comes. And then, nothing. A day bleeds into two. A weekend passes. Then an entire week. Absolute, deafening silence from the person who knew your absolute deepest secrets. There was no explosive argument, no slammed doors, no final tearful goodbye. Just a sudden, clean, and terrifying deletion of your existence from their daily life. It physically aches, doesn't it? That heavy tightness in your chest isn't just you being dramatic. It isn't just sadness. It is the absence of everything. It is a neurological emergency. Today we aren't just talking about a friendship naturally fading away. We are tearing apart the dark, hidden psychology of platonic ghosting. We're going to expose exactly what happens inside the mind of the person who walked away without a single word. And more importantly, we will uncover why this specific, quiet betrayal damages your brain worse than a romantic breakup. If you have been torturing yourself, agonizing over what you did wrong, take a deep breath. This is for you. To understand why this specific type of silence feels like a physical weight crushing your chest, we have to look at how your brain processes reality. Human beings are biologically wired as meaning-making machines. When we watch a movie, we expect an ending. When a relationship runs its course, we expect a conclusion. But when a best friend simply vanishes, you are thrown into a psychological purgatory. In clinical psychology, there is a specific term for a situation without a resolution: ambiguous loss. Coined by researcher Pauline Boss, ambiguous loss is widely considered the most stressful type of grief a human being can endure. Why? Because there is no closure. When a friend passes away, there is a funeral. When you have a massive bridge-burning argument, there is a clear ending. But when someone simply stops responding, your brain is trapped in an agonizing state of limbo, endlessly searching for a puzzle piece that doesn't exist. Let's look at your brain on an fMRI scanner when you realize you're being actively ignored. A landmark neuroscientific study reveals something absolutely terrifying. The region of your brain that lights up when you experience social rejection, the anterior cingulate cortex, is the exact same region that activates when you experience severe physical trauma. Being left on read by someone you implicitly trust doesn't just hurt your feelings. Biologically, your nervous system registers that sudden disconnection the exact same way it registers being punched in the stomach. So if you have been sitting there telling yourself that you're just being overly sensitive or that you should be over it by now, stop. Your brain is treating this friendship breakup as a literal bodily injury. Let's talk about the suffocating loneliness that comes immediately after the silence. There is a deeply painful phenomenon in psychology known as disenfranchised grief. This is a specific type of mourning that society simply does not recognize, validate, or have a structured script for. Think about it. When you go through a devastating romantic breakup, the world knows exactly how to handle you. People show up with ice cream and wine. Your family checks in. You're allowed to cry, take time off, and mourn the future you thought you had. Society hands you a massive emotional permission slip to completely fall apart. But when your absolute best friend of 5, 10, or even 20 years suddenly ghosts you, the world expects you to just show up to work the next morning and be perfectly fine. There are no popular sad songs playing on the radio about the best friend who suddenly stopped texting back. There are no greeting cards for a platonic heartbreak. Because our culture systematically diminishes the profound value of friendship compared to romantic love. You are left completely alone in the dark, wondering if you're crazy for hurting this much. So you end up grieving in secret. You feel foolish, overly dramatic, and deeply embarrassed for crying over someone you weren't even dating. But here is the brutal, undeniable human truth that psychology wants you to hear. Losing a foundational friendship can absolutely gut you deeper than losing a romantic partner. This person held the entire timeline of your life. They knew your embarrassments, your family dynamics, and the quiet parts of your heart. When they erase you, they don't just take away their physical presence, they take away a profound piece of your own history. Your grief is not an overreaction, it is entirely, devastatingly valid. But who exactly is the person on the other side of that silent screen? What is actually happening in their brain while you're agonizing over yours? Clinical psychologists have identified that people who ghost long-term friends typically fall into one of three specific psychological profiles. Let's start with the most common, yet profoundly misunderstood one: the avoidant. When you're left in the dark, your brain immediately assumes malice. You think they just didn't care. But the truth is, the avoidant isn't maliciously plotting to destroy your self-esteem. In fact, their sudden disappearance is rooted in a paralyzing, suffocating fear of conflict. This usually stems from a dismissive, avoidant attachment style, often forged in childhood environments where heavy emotions were punished, ignored, or treated as a burden. For the avoidant, any form of confrontation, even a healthy, honest conversation about a minor disagreement, feels like a literal threat. Their nervous system cannot tell the difference between a difficult text message and a physical predator. When they feel overwhelmed by the friendship, maybe the relationship demanded too much emotional intimacy, or maybe they simply felt inadequate, their brain pulls the fire alarm. They enter an extreme flight response. Ghosting becomes their ultimate survival mechanism. They convince themselves, if I just quietly fade away, I won't have to face their disappointment or navigate a messy conversation. Underneath that silence isn't indifference, it is protection.
For my own good.
They are desperately choosing their own emotional safety over the discomfort of telling you the truth. They didn't walk away because you weren't enough. They walked away because the emotional weight of communicating was simply too heavy for them to carry. But what if their sudden disappearance has absolutely nothing to do with fear, and everything to do with pure, suffocating exhaustion? This brings us to the second, and perhaps the most heartbreaking psychological profile unique to our hyper-connected modern world: the overwhelmed. To truly understand this specific type of social burnout, listen to this anonymous confession from a clinical case study. They wrote, "I didn't mean to ghost her. I was just dealing with massive depression and working 60 hours a week. She texted me a long paragraph about her relationship problems. I read it, but I just didn't have the mental energy to reply right then. I told myself I would reply on the weekend. The weekend came and I forgot. By the time I remembered, 2 entire weeks had passed. The guilt was so heavy that replying felt physically impossible. So I just never did. I let her think I didn't care because it was easier than explaining how broken I was." This is the devastating reality of the guilt-shame spiral. The overwhelmed ghoster actually intends to reply. They genuinely value you, but they are operating on a severe lack of emotional bandwidth. When someone's personal life is quietly falling apart, answering a simple text feels like carrying a boulder up a steep mountain. They procrastinate, desperately waiting for a burst of mental energy that simply never arrives. As the days turn into weeks, the profound embarrassment of their own delay paralyzes them. They look at your friendship, feel they are no longer a good enough person to maintain it, and automatically isolate themselves. This is the tragic, liberating human truth you must accept. Their deafening silence is not a reflection of your worth, your lovability, or your importance. It is a blinding reflection of their own shattered mental state. They didn't abandon you, they collapsed under their own weight. But their silence isn't rooted in childhood trauma or emotional exhaustion. What if it is dressed up as something entirely different? This brings us to a wildly toxic trend dominating our modern social landscape: weaponizing therapy speak. Over the last few years, our culture has become absolutely obsessed with mental health terminology. We talk endlessly about protecting our peace, cutting off toxic energy, and setting strict boundaries. In theory, this is a beautiful evolution, but in practice, a massive number of people have learned to use this clinical language as a bulletproof shield to avoid basic human accountability. Have you ever had a friend suddenly pull away, and when you finally ask what happened, they hit you with a cold, heavily sanitized statement? Something like, "I just don't have the emotional capacity for this dynamic right now," or "I am prioritizing my healing by stepping back," and then permanent, absolute silence. As a psychologist, let me be very clear. Using therapy buzzwords to abruptly abandon a long-term friend without having an honest, difficult conversation is not setting a boundary. It is sophisticated cowardice. A true boundary is a bridge designed to keep a relationship healthy. It is saying, "I need this specific thing to change so we can stay close." Ghosting under the guise of self-care is just dropping a bomb on the bridge and walking away. They are simply intellectualizing their emotional immaturity. By tossing around words like toxic or capacity, they instantly frame themselves as the enlightened victim and you as the problem, completely absolving themselves of the guilt of ghosting you. This modern excuse is uniquely devastating because it tricks you into feeling like you have to accept it. You are left standing there thinking, "Well, I can't argue with their mental health journey." But hear this human truth. You're absolutely allowed to be angry when someone uses the sacred language of healing to inflict profound, unnecessary pain. But here is the chilling paradox. What happens when the silence isn't just a cowardly excuse, but a calculated weapon? That brings us to the third and final profile. This brings us to the third and undoubtedly the most dangerous psychological profile: the dark triad. Up until now, we've talked about ghosters who are either drowning in their own exhaustion or paralyzed by the fear of conflict. But in this final profile, ghosting turns deeply sinister. For individuals scoring high in traits of narcissism, Machiavellianism, or psychopathy, their sudden disappearance is not a defense mechanism. It is a calculated, devastating weapon. Think back to the days right before the silence. Did you recently set a hard boundary they didn't like? Did you stop giving them the constant, exhausting validation they demanded? Or perhaps, did you simply start succeeding and shining a little too brightly? When a dark triad personality ghosts you, it is entirely about power. They are deliberately withdrawing their presence as a form of psychological punishment. They want to starve you of affection just to see if you will beg for it. This is where you see the cruelest micro-behaviors. They might leave your deeply emotional message on read on purpose, just so you know they saw it and chose to ignore it. They might even watch every single one of your Instagram stories while refusing to answer your texts. They want you to double text. They want to know you are spiraling, obsessing, and questioning your sanity. To the manipulator, your profound confusion is their ultimate ego boost. The human truth here is terrifying, but it is exactly what you need to hear to finally break free. They didn't leave because you meant nothing to them. They left because they knew exactly how much they meant to you, and they weaponized your love to break you. Now that you understand the psychology behind the silence, you're likely sitting there with a burning, desperate urge. Your brain is screaming at you to do one thing: send the final text. You want to type out a long, emotional paragraph demanding an explanation. You want them to acknowledge the profound pain they caused. You just want closure. But here is the brutal psychological truth that you need to hear to finally start healing. You are never going to get the closure you're looking for from them. Why? Because genuine closure requires mutual emotional maturity. It requires two people willing to sit in discomfort, look each other in the eye, and take accountability. The very act of ghosting you is the ultimate, undeniable declaration of their emotional immaturity. Think about the profiles we just broke down. If you reach out to the avoidant, their nervous system will panic, and they will likely block you. If you reach out to the overwhelmed, you will only trigger a deeper spiral of shame, resulting in even more deafening silence. And if you reach out to the dark triad manipulator, you are handing them the exact power trip they engineered this entire situation to get. You are proving they still control your mind. We have deeply romanticized the idea of closure in our culture. We believe an apology will magically fix the ache in our chest. But you cannot extract a mature apology from an emotionally unavailable person. Their silence is not a puzzle for you to solve. It is an answer. It is a glaring neon sign exposing their inability to handle basic human connection. You do not need an apology from them to heal. You need a paradigm shift. When a best friend ghosts you, your brain cruelly tricks you into believing, I just wasn't valuable enough for them to stay. But you have to completely reframe this. Their sudden disappearance is not a reflection of your inadequacy. It is a glaring, tragic reflection of their inability to handle the beautiful, messy reality of human connection. It is not a loss. It is a profound redirection. Stop waiting in an empty room for someone who has already locked the door from the outside. You must provide your own closure. You do this by radically accepting that their silence, as deafening as it was actually the loudest and most honest confession they could have ever given you. They walked away, yes, but they also brutally and efficiently removed someone from your life who could not offer you the bare minimum of respect. If this video helped you feel seen today, or gave voice to a quiet pain you've been carrying, please know that you're not alone. I want to invite you to share your story down in the comments. How did you survive being ghosted by a friend? And what did it teach you about your own resilience? Let's build a genuine community of healing down there. And if you want to keep exploring the quiet, hidden parts of the human heart, please subscribe to the channel. We have so much more to talk about. Until next time, be gentle with yourself and protect your peace. Thank you for watching.